in the dark, signals in the night. NASA's got the call and the task force is in sight. What's in the files, what's on the screen? Blacked out pages hiding what they've seen. Blue screens, data's tight. What are they hiding in the endless night? The truth is blurred, the lines are erased, but the black vault's ready to keep up the chase. Blue screens, data's tight. What are they hiding in the endless night? The truth is blurred, the lines are erased, but the black vault's ready to keep up with the chase. Heavily redacted, can't you see? What's buried in the files, locked with no key. We're digging deeper, won't let it go. Searching for answers in electric glow. Heavily redacted, but we buzz through. The black vault's hunting for what's true. Briefings and shadows, what do they hide? Are we alone or is something in the sky? Pages covered, truth turned away, but the questions grow stronger every day. Encrypted words, hidden code. What's behind the story we're being told? The black vault's here, peeling back the shade to reveal the secrets that never fade. Heavily redacted, can't you see? What's buried in the files, locked with no key. We're digging deeper, won't let it go. Searching for answers in electric glow. Heavily redacted, but we buzz through. The black vault's hunting for what's true. Neon skies, signals lost. What's the truth and what's the cost? The data's buried, but we're not blind. We'll keep on searching till we find. Heavily redacted, can't you see? What's buried in the files, locked with no key. We're digging deeper, won't let it go. Searching for answers in electric glow. Heavily redacted, but we buzz through. The black vault's hunting for what's true. Neon's pulse, the mystery calls. The truth is hidden behind these walls. But we keep moving, we're on the run. The black vault's fight has just begun. Yeah, the fight has just begun. In the dark, signals in the night. NASA's got the call and the task force is in sight. What's in the files, what's on the screen? Blacked out pages hiding what they've seen. Yeah, the fight has just begun.
That's right, everybody. Always nice to have a little bit of music there to get pumped up before we hit the start time there. I did start a couple minutes early for that reason. Now, if you have not been to behind the scenes, this is broadcasting on all the social media. Decided to do that again. It worked fairly good last time. And so I thought I would do that again. But that being said, with it being live, anything could happen. My aim here is to record a segment, which I later will trim down and release on the YouTube channel. Sometimes I'll put them out on X as well and Facebook. But essentially what I do is record the segments. I do these behind the scenes because they're a lot of fun. I get to hang out with you guys. You see me screw up sometimes. It happens. So that's what these videos are. If you have not heard them or joined us here before. Now it's real easy since we are live. This is an opportunity to take questions while I do the segment. Now it gets very busy on these live streams, and so the chat goes very, very quickly. I can tell you, if you are on YouTube, those super chats, they not only help the channel, but it allows me to kind of see them a little bit easier. They pop up on my screen in a special window. That's not a ploy to get you to use the super chat feature. That's obviously if you want to. Just being honest that you'll see me cater to those simply because I can see them more than all else. If you're listening to some of the other social media channels, I'm live on X, live on Facebook. I'll do my best. If I can see it, then awesome. If not, I'll apologize in advance. Sorry, allergies are kind of hitting me, so my eyes are a little watery. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is just kind of reset here. I got to close some windows. Bear with me as I do that. Work on my eye line there. So that's again exactly what all of this is. I'm going to try and keep my eye on that chat window the best that I can. I blink and it's a month between live streams. So I'm going to apologize in advance for that. Look, parenting and day job between the two, I've got no time to do my fun stuff here, but I do my best to get on here as often as I can. So thanks for your patience. I do know that it is very few and far between when I can do it. But when I can, here I am. I'm going to have some fun. It's a nice, cool fall day here in California. If you don't live here, we have had some crazy heat waves, so it's nice to be in the office a little bit relaxing today and hang out with you guys here at my lunchtime, depending upon where you are. I know some of you are all around the world, even speaking different languages in there in the chat. So welcome wherever you are. It's going to be fun. J. Allen Heineken, I miss the alien skull. So do I, to be honest with you. For those who watch the older streams, I used to have one of my favorite things. It's still here. It's actually in my bar here in my office. I posted a picture of it. Still have it on my shelf. It's just not in the shot. I had to move my office, and although I took the alien out before I stopped recording in that room and moved my office. Now I'm kind of in where it's a converted garage / warehouse where I run my normal business away from all of this. So I've got literally 100,000 headphones behind my green screen here. So that means absolutely nothing to when I live stream. So I had to kind of green screen it and go from there. But I missed that little alien as well. Janice, great to have you back. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So that being said, what I'm going to go ahead and do is kind of reset here. Here's how this part of it works. I'm going to record this segment. I was aiming to do 2 or 3, but never happens simply because of time. But you're going to kind of hear me do a re-intro. So forgive me for that. It's just kind of the joys of the behind the scenes. You'll also see an ending to that segment. Just gives me a cut point. If there are some questions that I can deal with, I will definitely do it. So it can be in the segment. If not, I just cut it. But don't automatically log off, because I'm going to go ahead and come back and hang out with you guys, answer some questions if I can, and we'll chat about some of the most recent news. So that being said, just give me 1 second here as I kind of reset everything, and I lost one of my windows, which is why I'm trying to stall and fix it. All right. So yeah, when I say bye the first time, don't go anywhere. I'll be right back to you. So just sit tight with me. Fusey Electron, hit the like button. Yes, please do. That always helps. Appreciate that. That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and making this your channel of choice today. I'm your host, John Greenwald Jr., founder and creator of The Black Vault. And today we are talking about a formally classified, although it's still primarily classified, briefing on UAP by the older, now defunct UAP task force for NASA. Now, this has been a story that I've kind of chased here for a couple of years, and that's simply because you have to get documents, read the documents. A lot of times people will dismiss them because they're heavily redacted, but you look for every little thing that you can to build off of it, file more requests, and see what you can come up with. Now, in this particular show, what I'm going to do is dissect not only the documents, but for you FOIA people out there, just kind of give a little bit of background on exactly how this unfolded, how I got to the documents, and why I say you really do have to look at every single character on these documents, even though that some may be heavily redacted. You got to look at everything, and you got to see what you can glean from it, what you can build off of it, and kind of go from there. So let me go ahead and pull up some visuals for you guys. Again, we are talking about this classified NASA briefing and the documents that recently came out. For those who read my articles, I did write about this last week, but I aim to kind of go into a little bit more detail today and discuss a little bit more in depth with you. Now, first, a little bit of housekeeping stuff here for those taking notes, or for those who want to fact check me. This was the result of 2 different Freedom of Information Act requests that were filed to the U.S. Navy. Now, the 2 requests that I filed were separated by quite some time. Again, it just was by chance that when they processed both of them, the documents were related. So they processed it and essentially closed both at the same time. You'll see those letters in a moment. But the first case asked for all communications, emails or otherwise, between the UAP task force and NASA. It was fairly straightforward. It was a wide net. And again, I was just looking for any of those communications between the two just to see what came up. Those are what I call FOIA fishing expeditions, simply because you want to see, without too much specificity, what you can get your hands on. Why? Because as you'll see, you cast those wide nets, you get leads for future cases. One of those cases was the second one that got responded to. That was asking for a classified slide deck on UAP that was created by Jay Stratton. We know that by the documents that have come out in previous cases that I had received, that this was shown to NASA and likely other agencies circa October 2020, around that time frame. But again, created by Jay Stratton. Again, some housekeeping. These were the FOIA letters for both cases. They essentially combined them both, as you can see. Both were October 10th, 2024, so last week as I record this. And they kind of combined both requests, put the documents on their electronic reading room, and there is where I could download them. I hate that they do that. It actually showed up on the reading room prior to me receiving these letters. So sometimes it goes out there and essentially is taken out of context. Sometimes people, not necessarily with these documents, but other releases, because when the Navy dumps the documents on the reading room, there's no context. So a lot of times they're very much misinterpreted by the general public or misrepresented in the media, simply because the Navy does an incredibly bad job. Sorry, Navy. But in fact, to broaden that a little bit, most agencies do a very bad job organizing these reading rooms. So when you download documents, there's kind of no context. You don't know where they came from, why it was requested, and so on. So again, not really relevant to this particular case, but more broadly speaking, that is the issue. So I always kind of cringe when they do that. Now, the root of these FOIA requests stemmed from a large group of emails from NASA, where I had discovered that the UAPTF had reached out to brief NASA. Now, I'm going to read you this email because, again, this was kind of one of the motivating pieces of evidence that allowed me to file additional cases to not only NASA, but to the Navy. In this particular email, briefing on activities of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or UAPTF, at the request of the UAPTF, Joel Montalbano, Margaret Kiefer, or Kiefer, I'm going to go with Kiefer on this, Suzanne Gillen, and I was being Mike Gold, who at the time was the Associate Administrator within the Office of International Interagency Relations. Those names will receive a briefing on activities of the task force via secure VTC. Per a public announcement on August 4, 2020, Deputy Secretary of Defense David L. Norquist approved the establishment of the UAPTF. The Department of the Navy, under the cognizance of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, leads the UAPTF. Additional information can be provided on the appropriate system. Mike Gold. Now, just for some context for those who don't live and breathe this kind of stuff, the UAP task force is now disbanded. This was one of the older groups that operated a couple years ago that was kind of an unofficial effort that led into an official effort that then led into other efforts like the what they call AOI MSG, which nobody really talks about because we don't know what they really did. But then ultimately what we know now is Arrow. So it was kind of like one of those precursor efforts that was out there investigating UAP. It just became, as we're led to believe, more structured and better funded as time went on. All of that is kind of debatable, if you ask me, but that's kind of the official line on the progression of this. So this is looking back in time a little bit. Again, Arrow being a different entity run by different people, the UAPTF is what we're focusing on here in this particular time frame. Now, let's get into the documents themselves. This goes back to September 14th, 2020. Now, you'll kind of notice here that even the classification is redacted of how high of a level of classification this was. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but you can see here the email slides, slides attached, but everything else was redacted. The interagency task force here, part of the Office of Naval Intelligence, we could probably take a guess that this is probably Jay Stratton or somebody who worked very near to him. 2 days after that, good afternoon. Thank you all for your assistance in getting us connected on Monday. I'm sorry the meeting ended so abruptly, but we timed out. We wanted to follow up and thank you for all your time. We appreciate the overview. We don't know who this was from. We don't know who it was to. They're hiding all of that. So if you can see a picture being painted here, even going back 4 years, they don't want to tell you what the UAPTF was doing, who they were specifically talking to, and what they were talking about. Now, there are some people out there that have kind of, shall we say, made a joke about these types of efforts, not only with Arrow, but even prior, being unstructured, being essentially those that were into the topic, but they weren't really contributing anything of value. I can tell you from my perspective and doing, 10,000 plus FOIAs on all sorts of different topics, if this was ultimately a joke and there was kind of like really nothing to it, and the people that were running the task force at the time were simply fans of UFOs and not producing anything of value, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't have a classification even that was redacted. You wouldn't have all of these types of issues when trying to look at the documents. Here's another email from September 18th. Again, we don't know from who. We don't know who it was to. Thank you for the opportunity to brief. Sorry for the issues on our end and the late start. We welcome any expertise you can provide and appreciate your time. So again, we're not really learning anything from this, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go through these emails real quick. This is the last one, is because even though the context and content, I should say, kind of really taught us nothing, what we are learning here is that whatever this is, whatever this briefing is, whatever this topic is of UAP, it is still to this day incredibly classified. They want to keep that veil of secrecy, even on an effort that is often minimized and, dare I say, even ridiculed. When it came to that task force. Again, some members of the media have kind of taken that route, that these were all just essentially run by people that were fans of UFOs producing nothing of value. Well, the evidence actually says otherwise, that this would be of value, that this goes beyond just sources and methods and techniques of how they took a photo or detected a UAP. Sure, some of that should remain classified. I hate saying anything should remain classified, but I'm not dumb. I mean, I understand that there are national security concerns with that. However, when you see stuff like this, and when you start looking at the evidence, and you'll see more here as the video presentation goes on, we can easily deduce that this wasn't just run by fans of UFOs or sci-fi people, that this was a effort that was producing results that even well after they've left government and the military, and that they are no longer involved in this effort, and this effort is even disbanded at this point, they still don't want to tell you anything, nor do they even want to tell you the classification that it is. And that's what I want to focus on here, is the fact that they won't tell you the classification. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that this is incredibly rare and unheard of. It is. We do see it from time to time in FOIA releases, but a lot of times you'll see one of two things. You'll see the redaction in full, but they don't say classification redacted. That part is kind of silly, and I'm not really sure why they did that. But one of the other things you see is, let's say you'll see the top secret or secret designator on the top, but then next to it is going to be, when it comes to top secret stuff, a code word, a compartmentalized access word that essentially drills down on the level of top secret it is. So just because you have a top secret clearance, you can't just look at everything top secret, that there are special compartmented designators for a lot of these things. You see it a lot with the NSA when it came to the UFO, not UAP, but they would use the proper acronym, if you ask me. But all of their UFO documents were top secret Umbra. Now, Umbra as the code word was classified, I think it was for decades. And one of the mandatory declassification review cases that I did with the NSA got the Umbra designator declassified. So some of the older releases would have top secret and then a black rectangle, and they wouldn't even tell you. Later releases would have top secret and then Umbra beside it, but it would be crossed out because it was partially declassified. So the top secret material was excised and the document was declassified and released to the public. So those code words can even be classified, as we've seen many times before. So with this, everything is classified. They don't want to tell you anything, indicating that obviously this is some pretty highly classified material and something that they want to keep the lid on. Now, the briefing itself that happened in 2020 through documents, not these that have been released before, but the email that I read to you earlier from NASA, we can figure out who was in the room. Now, from the Navy side, pretty easy. It was likely Jay Stratton. We don't know the list of people who else, but from NASA documents talking to Jay directly, we can determine that was him. The four NASA people that we know were there was Mike Gold. He was, as I mentioned before, the former acting associate administrator for the Office of International Interagency Relations. Joel Montalbano, who was the program manager at the time for the International Space Station. Margaret Kiefer, director of the Export Control and Interagency Liaison Division, and Suzanne Gillen, former associate administrator for legislative affairs. So these, again, were not just curious people. These were people that had quite some duties at NASA. The one that intrigued me the most was the program manager for the space station. So if we're dealing with these balloons and drones and so on and so forth that everybody loves to fall back on, that it's all foreign tech, and sure, that's absolutely part of this equation. There was a reason why the UAP task force reached out to NASA, and there was a reason either A, NASA specifically said, hey, we need our program manager for the space station in the room, or B, that the UAP task force said, we want to brief the program manager for the International Space Station. However that unfolded, and however that got Joel Montalbano in the room, either way, that's pretty fascinating to me, because what in the space station can help? Now, there's instrumentation on there that certainly is pointing towards Earth, that maybe there is something that they can pick up on their sensors. Fine, that's absolutely an acceptable answer. But that then tells us this is going on well beyond the balloons and drones that people like to fall back that this is all about. That clearly they're taking someone from NASA who has intimate knowledge about the space station and the instrumentation on board. My guess is they don't need them, that meaning the DoD or the Navy or whomever. They don't need NASA to focus in on a balloon or a drone of some kind, if they can even do that from the space station looking towards us. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there on why they were in the room, but it was intriguing nonetheless, especially when you add that on top of all of the secrecy that we see. There's something definitely very interesting going on. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that room. This was John Stratton, John J. Stratton, as he's known. He has retired from the Navy now. He's no longer involved, but he was part of the Office of Naval Intelligence. He was a senior analyst there, part of the Nimitz Operational Intelligence Center. I can tell you I've dug for years on his emails. I had first discovered his name before anybody had ever come out with him being involved in this topic. The reason I bring that up is, again, you want to look for every single lead that you can, because in an article I wrote quite a few years ago now, his name popped up as being the one that was writing the original statements for the U.S. Navy Public Affairs Office prior to the Department of Defense essentially taking over and making them the exclusive speaker on all things UAP. This was the time when I got a statement from the U.S. Navy from a spokesperson by the name of Joseph Gradisher. It was Jay Stratton, who I later, through, again, I'm kind of summarizing months and years worth of FOIA cases and going through documents. It was discovered that this guy by the name of Jay Stratton was the one that actually wrote that statement for the Public Affairs Office. Now, why is that important? Because that's when I started digging on this particular individual and what his role was. I knew he was important because you don't just go to any rando to write statements on behalf of the U.S. Navy. You essentially go to the top, the person that's most knowledgeable. So the U.S. Navy was going to this guy Stratton. Who is that? And that's where I started digging. And then in time, it was revealed that he was the director of the UAP task force. And with any program, big or small, in the US government, um, you can find a paper trail that actually will prove that. And later, I had found that proof that he was the director and head of the UAP task force, that it was listed in documents that were obtained via FOIA, and that came out to the general public. So all of that is verifiable history. So it was kind of cool to see all of that play out, that started from this, who in the hell is Jay Stratton, to he was the director or the head of the UAP task force that was doing these classified briefings, that was in charge of all of these things, and obviously was somebody of importance when it came to the UAP topic. So for me, from my seat, to kind of see that play out over the course of years, it's fun. That's why I love doing the FOIA stuff, because I love those types of puzzles and figuring out who's involved, what's involved. And then, of course, we later learned that Dr. Travis Taylor was involved, being one of the stars of the History Channel Skinwalker Ranch show. And then he turns up as working directly with Jay Stratton. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can glean from these documents if you pay attention and read all of the material. Now, here was the briefing itself. Here's the cover page for it. You can see UAP Task Force overall classification of this briefing is, as you guessed it, classified as well. The classification is redacted. They won't tell you. This name is redacted, Director of UAPTF. I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that says Jay Stratton under there. Why they redacted it, I'm not really sure. The document I just showed you, obviously the government has already acknowledged that. So why redact it? Who knows? This was the first slide of the briefing, UAP Task Force. This is the one with the most meat on it, the most information, because you'll see very quickly this remains heavily classified. But it gave a little bit of background for you. I'm going to read it, especially for the audio podcast version of this. But for you guys, go ahead and read along with me if you're watching the video itself. 2020 NDAA directed that Naval Intelligence lead a UAP task force, UAPTF, to, quote, collect, exploit, and analyze operational and scientific and technical data of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, unquote. UAP, any aerial phenomenon that cannot immediately be identified. UAPs reported within the United States and around the world. More bullet points: safety of flight, national security, and then next to national security is a redacted line. Next bullet point: effort, standardize and destigmatize reporting, and then more redacted information. That one was intriguing. What is this destigmatized reporting, and then what's redacted after that? Not really sure. Some other bullet points here: we use reporting from operator interactions to cue various other advanced means of tracking and analysis. Next point: the UAPTF uses a combination of subject matter, expertise, and specialized tools to identify, collect, investigate, and report on these contacts. The results of the data are used to, redacted, inform other U.S. government partners and develop concepts for addressing the problem. That was a very intriguing redaction to me. I'll read it again. The results of the data are used to, redacted. Used to what? Why can't they tell us? I mean, used to identify, used to blank, inform other U.S. government partners. That one didn't make sense to me at all for being redacted under national security concerns. But the next box here is what was even more intriguing: stigmas associated with reporting UAP. The first: don't want to be the, quote, UFO or, quote, tinfoil hat guy. The second one is fully redacted, also for national security reasons. What when it comes to stigma about UAP is classified and something that they can't tell you or I. That was another very intriguing redaction to me. The third one, don't want to lose training. Now, the box over here, the partners to the UAP task force, was also pretty intriguing. OSD was it research and evaluation? Now I'm drawing a blank on the acronym. This is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Now it's INS, which is Intelligence and Security. R&E, forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on that acronym. I think it's research and evaluation, but regardless, we can easily Google that. Northcom/NORAD, the Coast Guard, Space Command, DARPA, NASA, FAA, FBI, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Army, law enforcement, which was intriguing because I'm wondering how much law enforcement played a role in feeding information to the UAP task force. Some state sunshine laws, if there's any state sunshine users out there, maybe we should all kind of come together and formulate a way to attack that. That's something that I don't use a lot. As much as I use the federal FOIA, I don't use state sunshine laws a lot. And that's what you would need for local law enforcement if that's what this is in reference to. It does not seem to me that these are potential partners as the task force went on, but rather partners, as you can see listed here. So maybe there are some other documents from the local level where they were seeing things that were being fed to the US Navy. Obviously, law enforcement arms of the military exist. So I would guess that that may pertain as well. But I would think that that would come under the services. So I think that this was different. Something to note, maybe nothing, maybe something to look into for all those state sunshine people out there. Part of the intelligence community, NASIC, DIA, NRO, NGA, NSA. But look at this one, the second one on the list, they won't tell you. This is also reminiscent of the UAP reports that came out in the last couple of years, that they list all the agencies that contributed to the report, and there has been one redacted in the past. So this wasn't too surprising, but worth pointing out again. Why is it that that this is not something they can tell us? So there's an agency involved now in UAP that they don't want to tell us. Is it CIA? Is it FBI? I see the chat talking about DOE, FBI. Yeah, it could absolutely be all of the above, but DOE has admitted that they've been involved in this. I mean, I think that there was kind of an embarrassing moment in one of the hearings, if I remember correctly, with the director of the DOE. So none of that is like a classified where you can't say, oh no, we can't admit that the CIA or DOE or FBI or whomever is involved in UAP work. It doesn't make sense to me. So, one of those silly redactions that's worth pointing out. You'll see here there's two lines separated from IC. So probably not other government agencies, but what here is also redacted for national security. I was just going to mention you, Grant Levac. I see you in the chat that this is potentially reference to the Five Eyes Alliance, maybe something like that. Grant, always good to see you, bud. And others, industry/academia. So that's probably maybe their list of people, their consultants. I have discovered a document that talked about a UAP task force list of consultants, but we don't know who was on that list. Obviously, Travis Taylor is either high up on it or somebody who works very closely with the list of people. But obviously, there's some industry and academia that are involved. Maybe that's what he's referring to here in the briefing of their consultants. Not really sure, but interesting to see nonetheless. Now we get into, obviously, something they don't want to show you. You can see here the next slide is entirely redacted with the exception of the header, or at least part of the header, reported sightings of UAP, and then redacted. So whatever comes after UAP there, if you're not watching the visual version, there's just a word or words past UAP that they won't tell you. Then the entire slide is redacted. Big black box that says B1. Somebody posted on social media, I don't know if they were joking or not, it's a brilliant idea, a t-shirt with, it was all black t-shirt with this B1 on it. And I thought it was brilliant. I've never seen one before. If you guys know if somebody's selling it, please let me know. I will buy one from them. I just didn't want to take the idea and make one for myself, but man, that was just a cool idea. But this big black box across the entire slide hides it all from you. Now, the next one we can read a lot. Now, for those who don't know, this is the text of this has actually been released by the US Navy before. I had received it along with other FOIA requesters as well. Not part of this briefing. Didn't look like this either. It was simply the text of this slide on the Tic Tac case from 2004. Now, we all know this is one of the arguably most famous UFO cases of present day. And if you're involved in this topic, you likely know exactly what I'm referring to, but I'm going to go through the bullet points anyway if you're not familiar with it. Again, these are bullet points, so not a story per se, but it gives the facts about the Tic Tac case on 14 November 2004. It was part of the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, specifically the USS Princeton, the E-2 Hawkeye, VMFA 232, VFA 41, and the USS Louisville, all part of that particular case. 30 nautical miles off the coast of Mexico, that's southwest of San Diego. Next bullet point, it was, quote, solid white, smooth, with no edges. It was uniformly colored with no, I'm not sure how to say that. I'm going to probably stick my foot in my mouth here. I'm not sure how to say that word, so I'm not even going to try. Pylons or wings. It was approximately 46 feet in length. Don't make fun of me. I'm not used to that word. Pilots reported the incident through intelligence personnel. There was a large amount of harassment and ridicule throughout the Nimitz. Reporting terminated at Third Fleet. There was no process to share the reporting. Somebody in the chat, nacelle. That's new to me. I'm not a Navy guy. I'm not entirely sure what that would be, but nacelle. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, writer of minds. I appreciate that. Sorry, just didn't want to make an idiot out of myself and try and guess. Reporting terminated at Third Fleet. There was no process to share the reporting. Last bullet point, although the debriefs of aircrew and other personnel within the strike group validated the event, there was very limited data to support technical analysis. So there's the rundown of what the UAP task force had on the Tic Tac case. Now, obviously, this goes back to even allegedly the OSAP days, many, many years prior to when this briefing was created, that they as well had done some research into the Tic Tac case and interviewed witnesses and so on. But even in 2020, when they made this briefing, that essentially was all they knew. And the government is willing to give this out. It's curious to me why they're willing to give this out. I'm not sure it's because that some of the data through Bigelow Aerospace and Bass had kind of leaked with some of the research they had done and those bullet points. Obviously, the witnesses were talking. Why this intrigues me, because it may sound like kind of a dull point and who cares to some people, but look at what they want. We would just went over one slide that's entirely redacted. And here we have a Tic Tac case, which is still to this day, as far as I'm aware, considered unidentified by the US military, that they have no idea what this is. And they're willing to tell us. What is it that they're not willing to tell us? And that always intrigues me when you juxtapose those two things, where they'll black out something top to bottom in one slide, and then the next one tell you all about the details of the Tic Tac. That always intrigues me. What it proves, I don't really know, but it's intriguing nonetheless. The next slide here, we are right back into redacting nearly from top to bottom. Header, pilot reporting, and then more than half the line is redacted. Underneath that, air crew see the UAP. In this case, they photographed the UAP, ... and then it's all blacked out. Now, my guess is these are photographs, maybe some text. I mean, that's all just speculation and conjecture. Who knows? But they're talking about photographs of the UAP and absolutely nothing there. All redacted for national security reasons. The next slide, same deal. All redacted for national security reasons. Top to bottom, including the entire header. The next slide, the entire header is redacted yet again, but now we see something familiar. UAP are not easily explainable, can quickly overwhelm our aircrew. And we see some visuals of one of the leaked 3 UAP videos, namely the gimbal. And you see 3 screen grabs from that. Underneath the 3 screen grabs from the gimbal video is another section entirely blacked out for national security reasons. You go to the next slide and you see what are likely 4 different photos with 4 different captions, all of which are redacted with the exception of one photo that's a still frame of a video that we've seen before. This is the green. Some people talk about triangle UFOs, some talk about pyramid UFOs. Others will debunk this, saying that the triangular shape is simply the aperture of the camera, and that's the shape that you see, that this could not be that particular shape, but rather an artifact of the camera. Look, I let people much smarter than me kind of determine all of that and duke it out when it comes to the image analysis. But regardless, we can see that one. But obviously, 3 other photos are classified for national security reasons. Going to the next slide, yet again, we have an entire slide, top to bottom, header included, big black boxes, national security reasons, fully exempted. Next slide, current assessment. The UAPTF has collected redacted reports dated from the last redacted years that describe encounters with UAP. More than half have been detected via multiple sensors. Now, let's back up. They won't tell you how many reports that the UAPTF collected. They won't tell you how many years they had been collecting reports or how far back those go. Why not? See, Arrow even gives out how many cases that they have, or at least rough estimates. What is it about this that they won't tell you the number of cases or how long they've collected them or how far back they go, whichever this is in reference to, all for national security reasons? This is one of the most fun redactions, potential explanations. It's a list of 3 things, potential explanations for UAP. Number 1, entirely redacted. Now, what's redacted about this? Like why? The number 1 explanation, potential explanation from the UAPTF is fully redacted for national security reasons? Is can they really not say, let's just give the benefit of the doubt that this says foreign technology, Chinese, Russian, whatever, UAVs if they want to go the drone route, balloons if they want to go the balloon route, balloons and drones if they want to tackle both of them in this line. Um, why can't they tell us that? They're quick to release images of Chinese spy craft that are floating above. They're quick to shoot it down and take action. They're quick to release some photos. There is one incident where they went and recovered the debris, and those photos actually do exist. The rest is being hidden, but at least they talk about what they claim those objects were, which were, again, these spy craft, spy balloons with technology on board. Yet with this, they won't even tell you roughly what that potential explanation is. One of the more fascinating redactions, if you ask me, because again, you can sit and think about that for a while. I'll move on, but you can sit and think about that for a while. Think about potential explanations that fit there and think about why they would redact it. It's pretty interesting to kind of play around with those answers. Number 2, unknown weather or other natural phenomena. So that's self-explanatory. Number 3 is exempted, redacted the whole line, but this time it's B5. Now, I want to juxtapose these two. Number 1 was B1. So the number 1 list, again, national security reasons why they wouldn't tell you. Number 3, B5, is a different exemption. The different exemption is essentially internal deliberation. It's in the FOIA world, what we call the redacted if you want to exemption. There's really no justification, rhyme, reason, or definition for FOIA exemption B5 other than what the law says. And that's essentially this interagency deliberation. If they're talking about something, if they're creating draft documents that are not final, all of that is subjected to being exempted under B5. So ideas that are not necessarily solidified or supported by the agency, you can argue that B5 could potentially cover those. Why I'm kind of being like vague with exactly what B5 would cover is exactly the reason why we call it the redacted if you want to exemption, because it is the most wildly misused and overused exemption that exists. So it's really frustrating to see that you have all these national security exemptions and then all of a sudden you have a B5 exemption in the middle of it. Why? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating, to say the least. Then you have more than half of the slide down here, all of the content 100% redacted. Next slide, you see that pesky B5 in addition to B1. Now they've redacted the whole slide, citing both exemptions. And the header on this one, plan of action and milestones. So this is what the UAP task force wanted to do, and essentially probably, and there's a little speculation also, but when they wanted to do it by, probably some milestone dates, which is not abnormal when you see briefing slides like this, where they give you the milestones and when they want to achieve it by. So it gives them those goals moving forward. All of that is exempted. And this is the most fun slide. Questions? Yeah, I have a hell of a lot because you've redacted pretty much the whole thing. Obviously, the questions, though, were more geared to the briefing itself, probably posed to those four NASA individuals that were in the room, along with anybody else that that received this briefing. There's probably quite a few. On a quick side note, I have discovered that it was likely this briefing, or at least something like it, that was recorded onto video. And Jay Stratton, who was likely the one that did it, recorded a video with this briefing or again, something like it. And they won't release that, no portion of it whatsoever, and consider the entire thing classified. That was another thing that I had discovered through the NASA documents that had come out, that that existed, and trying to go after it was no easy task. But after some time, they ultimately denied it. So pretty frustrating that type of secrecy around all of this, which if it has easy explanations, should not exist. If you ask me, it's frustrating to see. And it's frustrating to see that it's getting worse, that it's something that there's, not, the veil is not lifting, the secrecy is not lessening, the transparency is not increasing. As much as people want to tell you that it clearly is not. It is something that they want to keep a really big lid on, a fat, heavy one that you can't lift off. And they create these types of releases where, look, I'm sorry, if the skeptics were 100% correct, and this was all easily explainable, low information zone, drones, balloons, foreign technology, spycraft, or our own tech, these types of things would not exist. And if they did, and those were all the easy explanations, they wouldn't be released to the public in this way. You would have little tidbits where you can piece together, oh, we're talking about unmanned aerial vehicles that are coming from other countries that are plaguing our military, and that's ultimately what all of this is. Why would you be briefing the program manager for the International Space Station if this was that? Like there's a lot of things when you try and piece it together that just absolutely don't make sense. And with that, it's frustrating to me to see this, but super motivating to continue to dig and try and pull out these puzzle pieces to see what you can come up with. That said, I hope this taught you at least a little bit. It's kind of hard to teach when your document is fully redacted, but at least a little bit about not only the FOIA process that goes into this, but the briefing itself. Because even though this was in this context to NASA, we do know that this was likely given exactly the same way or very similarly to other agencies as well. And those all generate paper trails. And you guessed it, I'm going after those as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Look, if you like this video, truly appreciate a thumbs up or wherever you're listening to. 5 stars if you're on the audio version is what I aim for. Please give it a quick rating, give it a quick review if you're listening in on the podcast version. And of course, sharing is the absolute best way that you can help me, and that gets the message out, spreads the word out about this channel. I know I don't record as much as I want or as much as some of you want, but I will definitely do my best to get more videos out to you, and those shares, likes, and reviews absolutely help with that. If you aren't aware, if you're watching the video version of this, I do drop a lot of these presentations down to the audio podcast stream. It's pretty much on any audio podcast platform under the Black Vault Radio. And I'll reverse that. If you're listening and have no idea that there's a video presentation involved, please go to theblackvault.com/live. That will bounce you to the YouTube channel where I broadcast live videos. This particular one was recorded live. And that way I can pull in your questions as I see them, if I see them, and try and interact with you as much as I can. And then they're edited down for later video and audio releases. So please make sure you're subscribed to all of the above, because sometimes one of those channels gets something that the other doesn't. So I try and put everything out there. Sometimes, though, time constraints don't allow me. So make sure you're subscribed. And that said, this is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time. All right, live streamers, don't go anywhere. All right. Okay, so that's a segment. That's done and over with. Happy to keep talking about that subject. I'm happy to take other questions. I noticed a couple super chats came in. Thank you so incredibly much for this. They weren't questions to the video segment I just recorded, so forgive me, I didn't pull them into that. But I do want to recognize Janice's Garage. Thank you so much for your super sticker, no question attached, but do appreciate your support. And Sage Sleuth, always appreciate your efforts and opinions. Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for the support of the channel. As I mentioned earlier, if you weren't here, anything that comes in, and I mean it when I say 100%, goes right back into the Black Vault itself, whether it be the hosting fees and stuff that you guys probably don't even care about, but it does rack up pretty quickly. The FOIA document costs when they do arise. Not everything costs money when it comes to that. I try and structure it where it doesn't, but sometimes it does. NASA has charged me hundreds of dollars in recent cases just for some of their UAP emails. So it really goes towards all of that. And what's ever left over just gets saved for the next month. So thank you guys for any of that type of support. Janice's Garage again. I appreciate that. Christmas wish, behind the scenes video from the Black Vault headquarters. Well, this is kind of the headquarters, albeit green screened. If you weren't here earlier in the broadcast, away from all of this, my normal day job is I created a business selling headphones, very inexpensive earbuds and headphones, inexpensive by design. That was the business model. And I sell to schools and school districts and museums and hospitals in bulk in all 50 states. So that is my normal day job. So behind me is actually where I work. And it's absolutely grotesque to look at because it's just stacks and stacks and stacks and bags and bags and bags of earbuds that nobody cares to look at. So that's why I started to green screen simply to kind of separate myself. So you're getting a live stream from the headquarters. It's just not as flashy as you would want it to be. So yeah, hopefully that kind of addresses that a little bit. I wish I had an office building that I could deck out in total Black Vault regalia and just have an awesome set, but I don't. I got to rely on the green screen and that kind of stuff. But who knows? Maybe one day. But I really do appreciate your support on that. Logan Black, you're the best. I really appreciate that comment and your support, Logan. Thank you so much for that. Truly, truly appreciated. And I'm going to keep flipping back and forth here between screens. And I will get the most important question of the day. Timothy Brigham, Dr. Timothy Brigham, how is your son doing at the ballpark, John? On the pitch, he is doing awesome. He is rocking it, as us Americans say, playing soccer. For the majority of the people that say it correctly, playing football. He loves it. He's a goalie, for those who don't know. I don't post about my family a whole lot, but I am a proud dad, and periodically we'll post those pictures out, and you'll be able to see him on the pitch having a great time in the net, doing some crazy stuff. And I love posting those pictures because he's done really good. And this last Saturday had a great game, had a 4-0 win, had some amazing saves, had probably, and this is a proud dad moment, one of the best saves that he's ever had. And being he's only 10, so they're still learning, they're still developing. But I'll make the story quick because I know a lot of you are from the UK and are probably much bigger football fans than the soccer fans over here in the States. But one of the things that he's learning and developing the most at, but it's got to be a big focus of his because this is where they can get the best of him, is over the head. And he struggles with that a little bit. This age group struggles with it because the net just got higher at 9v9, and that just happens. Anyway, long story short, as I go off on a tangent here about my son, this kid just supermaned up, had a one-hand curl around the ball on a shot that was beautiful. It was a beautiful shot, but he saved it, grabbed it, pulled it down, landed on the ground, did one bounce dribble back to himself, and had reset as a goalie to throw it out to one of his players. He did it so flawlessly, it didn't even look impressive, but it was probably one of his best saves ever. So, Dr. Brigham, that is the update. He's doing very well, and I appreciate you caring enough to ask. So, thank you very much for that. William Runner, I grew up playing soccer, Jonathan. Perfect. Yeah, it's a great sport. What's funny is growing up, I played nearly every sport but soccer. I never played. And of course, my kid comes out and he started when he was like 5. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. I never watched it. I never played it. I knew nothing about it other than you kick the ball back and forth. And I thought it was boring. Don't kill me, guys. Let me finish that thought. I thought it was boring. Then he started playing, and I was like, well, damn, I got to figure out, what the hell this game is. So what I did was started watching it, and man, I got hooked because I had played football and watched football, played baseball and watched baseball, played basketball and wasn't so good at it. And kind of watched it, but basketball was bottom of my list. I was much better at football and baseball. But again, had no clue about soccer. And man, it's the coolest thing because he loves it and got me totally into it. And I was wrong. It is not boring. It is super exciting, super um, it's very much a contact sport that I think some Americans just don't realize, like how much of a contact sport it is. So, look, I didn't do a live stream to talk about soccer the whole time, but since you guys brought it up, watch it. It's so cool. It really is a great time. So thank you guys for asking about my kid. I'm super proud of both of them. My daughter as well. She is 5, just about to turn 6 here in 3 days as I record this. She's turning 6, just started gymnastics. So she is off and running on her athletic feats. And she as well has been really excelling with it. I know all parents say that about their kids, but I'm sure I'll be posting videos and photos of her as she does more and more as well. But yeah, super proud. You could tell they're my pride and joy. They have taught me so many things about life. More than all else, though, taught me patience and the lack thereof that I have. That like I've made me realize like I just really need to focus on patience. I thought waiting 14, 15 years for a FOIA response was frustrating. Whew, kids know how to push your buttons. And I think all the parents out there probably know what I'm talking about, but they've taught me so much about life. So thank you guys for asking about that. Let me see here. I'm just pulling some rando questions here, some of which I won't even. Let me see. Any thoughts on the many UFOs flying over Langley and the Pentagon saying nothing they can do? Uh, let's just talk about soccer more. No, I'm kidding. Gary, that's a great question. I haven't posted much about the topics. I think I I have to look back. I think I had posted it when the war zone had broken the story um, quite a few months ago. And a quick shout out to them. I mean, they do great work, and they very much are ahead of the game on a lot of these stories. And I think other than that post, I haven't really talked about it. And to be honest with you, I think what we're dealing with in that regard, from the visuals that I've seen kind of being posted, and I know it's unfolding kind of as we speak here, but um, I think we're dealing with drones when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I've said this on this channel a lot, and I'll say it again. Drones are absolutely a part, but they are not all of the UAP conversation. And I think that when it comes to what I have talked about, the counterintelligence value of the UAP conversation, is that the UAP topic can be used to cover up the real unknowns, the real phenomena that most of us are more interested in than all else. But it's also, I think, used to confuse people around the globe, including citizens alike, that when they're seeing these types of drones and so on and so forth, we don't really know what they know or don't know when it comes to the intelligence behind this. Have they determined it? Can they really do something about it? Can they not do anything about it? There's so many unanswered questions that I think from a counterintelligence perspective is an absolute gold mine. Because from a foreign intelligence service, and they're on the outside looking in, and let's say they're responsible for buzzing Langley or buzzing our warships or whatever, fill in the blank. And then the US military is going, yeah, we can't really do anything about it. We have no idea. We can't identify them, when it could be a lie and they know exactly who it is. That foreign intelligence service that may be connected to that particular technology goes, how do they not know? Do they know? Wait a minute. What's the real story? So I think that that's the counterintelligence value where, you're confusing and muddying the waters so much that you don't know what's really going on. You also have the advancements of technology for just the commercial side of it, just for the private consumer can go out and get some pretty amazing stuff for very reasonably priced price tags that they can use to kind of fly in and out of some of these sensitive military installations for no other reason other than what's and giggles. And they do it because they can. I say that not because I'm guessing, but because I got documents through NCIS where people were flying drones in and around naval air stations, and some of them would crash, others would essentially just get caught. So that has been an ongoing and growing problem, and these documents were from years ago. So that technology has definitely advanced. That's available to consumers. So you have so many different levels and aspects to this on what could potentially be buzzing. And I'm kind of more speaking broadly versus just Langley here, but what could be buzzing these military installations. But when you see the videos, like there was one, I think it was on Reddit that kind of went to X and was passed around. Look, it's probably more military grade, but we don't really know exactly the root of it. And I don't think that there's anything paranormal about it. I don't think that this is truly the UAP aspect that I'm most interested in. It's still interesting from a security and national security standpoint, but when it comes to like the actual phenomena, whatever those may be, because I do think it's more than one aspect of a phenomenon of some kind, then it doesn't interest me as much. Now, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I think what we see here with a lot of these most recent stories is that the UAP news, the true, real unknowns that are exhibiting technology that we kind of don't have, is slow. And so what happens, and it's just because there's a tight security layer that like there's not a whole lot of information flow out there. So I think what happens is that when you have anything unknown that's unidentified, that's a buzzword. And then all of a sudden, when you add in the military to it and they're confused, that's a headline. And so you have these over exaggerated and blown out of proportion headlines that are then kind of connecting the two. And I think that that is problematic because I think it creates a problem. And I think then in the end, that's exactly what any counterintelligence specialist would want. where you muddy the water so much, because what do you have now? You have a lot of warring factions of people saying mothership, and there's craft that we can't identify. And then the opposite end, it's like, yeah, it's a carrier of drones, and we're talking about a problem here, but it's only drones. That you just, all you're doing is throwing fuel on that fire of the debate. And in the end, you do have so much confusion out there and so much um unproven, unanswered, unaddressed questions and issues. That's what they want. That's exactly what they want. That is the counterintelligence value of all of this. So then the Pentagon can maybe throw out a bone and say, well, we can't identify them, or there isn't anything we can do about it, or whatever they may come out with. But then after that, sit back and watch it all burn. And that's exactly what I think you see happen, because you look at Drudge. It doesn't matter what your thoughts are on Drudge, but drudgereport.com remains one of the most coveted news spots ever. And when you get to UFO and UAP stories of today, a lot of times he links over to like the Daily Mail and the Daily Star and a lot of the English tabloids that don't take, there are exceptions, but they don't take a whole lot of care with their reporting. So they'll just throw anything out there for clicks, and they get it. And Drudge puts it out there. And then what takes over is what I call copy and paste journalism. Because if Drudge ran the story, then we all have to run the story. We've got to do this. And so then you see this avalanche of coverage. And if you don't believe me, just watch it. It's fascinating. I mean, take your shoes off and sit back and take your mind out of the UAP thing and look at those types of stories, and then watch that avalanche of media coverage. And it happens time and time and time again. And that muddies the water. So I think that look, I believe that there's a massive cover up. I believe that there's a conspiracy to shield this. I believe it's strengthening. I believe that it's getting worse. I believe that the strides that people think we've taken in the last 6-7 years, which albeit sometimes is positive, has backfired and created a level of secrecy we haven't seen in decades. Sorry, but it's just true. You look at the segment I just recorded, that is easily provable with actual evidence. And so all of this stuff that comes along that muddies the water is unfortunate. And I know I get a lot of flack from some people for pointing out the BS that's out there, and the over exaggeration of stories, and the misrepresentation of stories, and the trust, what we call the trust me bro type of mindset here. That hurts those positive developments. So it's like we take 2 steps forward and like 19 back. And where I get myself in trouble is I'm not afraid to point it out, because I think it needs to be pointed out. If we're going to have a realistic and beneficial and valuable conversation about all of this, then we need to separate the wheat from the chaff, and we need to not be afraid to do that. And we need not to be afraid to call it out, because if you don't, there are some people that believe, well, the general public's talking about UAP and that's a good thing. Well, no, because I think what we've seen here in the last year is kind of a waning interest when it comes to the media and the media coverage on this. Now, do you still see headlines? Of course, but you see certain periodicals that used to give some coverage to it that are now seemingly bashing it all. New York Times comes to mind. So I'm not going to sit and dissect the New York Times and the value of their coverage. We all have varying opinions on that. But broadly speaking, they went from breaking the story on ATIP, which we learned later was wildly wrong, but giving the UAP topic some very specific coverage, big coverage, cover page stories. And then as the years went on, now you have, these kind of debunking stories that I've seen in the last 6 months to a year from them. That's just one example. So I think that's where I say the interest is waning, because you just don't have any quality information out there that's at the forefront. What is at the forefront is the over-exaggerated, unproven, evidence-less claims. And that's what's getting out there and winding up in an English tabloid on the cover of Drudge, then you have that copy and paste journalism, and it's a vicious cycle. And it goes over and over and over. And that's where I'll say it again, get myself in trouble, but we can't be afraid to point it out, because look, in this particular case, when it comes to UAP, which is a very, I believe, crucially important conversation to have, bad coverage is not publicity that you want. More people talking about it, but talking about those over exaggerated stories, that's not what we want either. I would take less people talking about this, but talking about it accurately, than more people getting excited about something that's just going to flop at the end anyway. And I think that that's what we need to focus on moving forward. I lost my mouse. Okay. Thought I froze there. Janice's Garage, thank you so much for your support on this live stream. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you. I am going to back up here. Aaron Desario, always good to see you, Aaron. Please give us your thoughts on Schellenberger's reporting. Yes, the a big topic as of late, the Immaculate Constellation story. I'll probably slip up as I talk here and say conception or whatever, but Immaculate Constellation. This story, look, I give everything a shot. I like Michael Schellenberger. I've spoken to him on a few occasions in the past, not about this. Have zero issue. It's not like I cringe and go, oh gosh, Schellenberger's coming out with a story. It's quite the opposite. I mean, I pay attention if he publishes something. It's intriguing to me. But I think one of the aspects to this that really hurt the story, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it like it is, the names that came out to go, yeah, Schellenberger's spot on. I knew about this all along, but I never said anything. That kind of stuff bothers the heck out of me. And if it's true, where, they're involved in some of these names that are coming out that are involved in this, that bothers me too, because then we're just talking about the same people making these claims behind the scenes, and then people parroting them in their own respective ways. And when it comes to Schellenberger's way, it's his, I believe it's called Public, his online site that he runs, where he writes these types of articles. And it bothers me. I mean, that's not a nail in the coffin. I will still absolutely entertain the idea that there's something there. But when you have those types of names, I'm sorry, it does nothing but hurt this, because then it is this really going to come down to the same core group of people that have been connected to the same types of claims for years and years? If so, that bothers me, because it's the same group of people that hasn't produced the evidence to support their claims in the first place. And it's like they're hopping around from anybody who'll listen and publish these anonymous claims, and people roll with it. Now, I'm speculating here, and I want to stress that, and this is not meant to be disrespectful to Michael Schellenberger in any way whatsoever. But I think in a situation like this, Michael Schellenberger reports on things well away from the UFO and UAP topic the majority of the time. I think we can all agree on that. So when somebody looks at the topic and scratches the surface, and they're approached by people that may have verifiable backgrounds that seem incredibly credible on paper, that doesn't mean that those people are potentially misleading Michael Schellenberger. And in his world, people with those credentials reporting on non-UFO topics are likely incredibly credible, that they're reliable, that they're people that you can trust. I'm sorry to say, in the UFO world, that is kind of not true. And it doesn't mean that it's across the board not true, because again, there are exceptions to these rules. But there are people with high-ranking military backgrounds, have worked in the intelligence community in the past, that come out with these grandiose claims, and in the end, nothing ever gets proven. They write their books, they do their TV shows, they'll do their interviews on TV and radio, and then a lot of times they'll just kind of fade into the background, and then that paves the way for somebody else. So you can't operate off that same formula. Now, I'm not saying that Schellenberger was duped, but I am saying that maybe from his perspective, he saw a story that he felt was verifiable and he rolled with it. And to his defense, he may have gone through the vetting process that any journalist should do. But in the process of vetting, he may have ended up in the same tiny core group of people that on paper may seem impressive, but over the last however many years have not proved their claims in the end. Is that what happened here? No, and that's why I stressed, or that is that what's happened here? I don't know, but that's why I stressed this is speculative, because at the end of the day, away from it being Michael Schellenberger, these are still anonymous sources. These are still things that we can't verify. Is FOIA going to turn up something on this unacknowledged special access program? I know people have a lot of misconceptions about me and FOIA and what it can and can't produce, but no, I don't think it would. So if this is some crash retrieval program or whatever UAP alien life thing that they want to come out with now, I'm sorry. I don't think that Michael Schellenberger would be the one that would get that information. Again, that's not meant to be ridiculing him. I don't think the information would come out at all. I just don't. I don't think that anybody would come out with that to somebody without really doing a grandiose reveal and having enough information to the general public to prove it. And when you look at, let's say, the Edward Snowden leaks, and when you look at the Julian Assange, what was leaked to him and him republishing, there was something that came along with all of those stories that turned the intelligence community upside down, namely the Snowden stuff and the NSA spying and all that, all of that. There was something that came along with it, and that was the actual evidence to prove it. So where is that when it comes to the UFO and UAP leaks? And that's what we don't have. What we do have, this is the other part of this whole thing that confuses the heck out of me, but it's intriguing as well, is what has leaked, what has come out. And this is away from Schellenberger's reporting, but again, more broadly speaking, the UFO, UAP imagery and videos, for the most part, they leak, they come out, and even after years since they've come out, the Department of Defense seemingly just doesn't care. And yet, when controlled unclassified information, so unclassified, controlled unclassified information goes out on Discord, they're like taking action within a day. They're tracking it down, they're finding who it is, they're prosecuting, and they're literally putting people behind bars. And yet here we have the name and details of an unacknowledged special access program being blasted out there. And yet seemingly no one really cares. What action is there? So you have to look at those aspects to this story, because I think a lot of people don't. And you can only deal with what we know. And what we know is what happens when real information leaks with evidence attached and the repercussions behind it, and the actions that the DoD has taken. With the UAP stuff, nothing seemingly happens. So going back to your question, Aaron, when it comes to Schellenberger's reporting, this is not against him, and I want to stress that, because I don't want to disrespect him at all. But he may not realize that his sources are playing him. And I believe that there are journalists out there that have been played. And I don't want to speak for him, and I'm obviously paraphrasing here, and I want to stress that. But Brian Bender came out, the original reporter who reported on ATIP for Politico the same day that the New York Times had come out with theirs, had essentially said he felt misled about the whole thing. And again, that's a paraphrase, but I invite you to look that up. But that he felt misled and kind of duped by the whole thing about what it was portrayed as. And it all kind of stems from the same people that I would guess are connected to Schellenberger's sources, or are potentially Schellenberger's sources by name. So that's the problem that I have with stories like these. I want someone like Michael Schellenberger or him himself to come out and say that his sources have absolutely nothing to do with what we know. And Look, that may sound harsh or critical or rude towards some people, but that's what I'd love to see. Because I think that if there is truly an unacknowledged special access program that has that scope, there are going to be very few people that know about it and that can give the details to somebody like Michael Schellenberger. And I believe that that group, that small group, would not be connected to the people that we know about. So I would love for him to come out with a fully independent story that, I'm sorry, people like Jeremy Corbell don't come out and go, yeah, well, our sources told us that all along, and we knew about it all along, but we just never told you guys about it. That has to go away. So that's problematic to me. Is there a possibility that their sources are the same? Yes. Is there a possibility that their sources are right? Absolutely. I'm not going to totally dismiss the whole thing, but it just doesn't do it any favors. And I stand by that based on the history of what we've seen, the types of stories that we've seen, and the lack of vetting that we've seen by people that are all connected to that group, that are likely connected or are not the actual, if not they're the actual sources for Michael Schellenberger. So not supposed to be an insult towards him, but something that we have to absolutely consider, because I'm tired of it. I really am, because it just seems to go around in circles and circles and circles. That's my diatribe there, Aaron. I bet you're regretting asking, but hopefully that answered your question. If the Wanderly K, if this is a psyop, does it automatically follow that UAP have nothing to do with NHI, since the idea of a psyop is to misinform? Look, if this is a psyop, it potentially is all of the above. And that's where I talk about the counterintelligence value of all of this, is that if it's potentially all of the above, you mess it up so much that you have no idea what it is. And when you zero in on one of the multitude of things that it could be, and you're questioning yourself because of what came out over here or what came out over there, that's exactly what counterintelligence is all about. It's to make sure that you don't know what's really going on. It's to screw up the knowledge and intelligence agencies around the world. That's the point of it all. And so does, if I'm understanding you correctly, does it automatically follow that UAP have nothing to do with NHI? No, that's not. To me, that would not be a given, that if it turns out to be some kind of psyop against the world population, does that immediately discount, again, if I'm reading this correctly, NHI? No, I don't think it does. In fact, I may think it may even strengthen the argument a little bit that that would be part of the equation. But what makes this so difficult is you have all of the above it potentially at play. I can't prove NHI, and I'm not here to say I 100% believe it's here or anything. But what I'm saying is I believe that it's an explanation that's at play that I have not seen enough to go, that's impossible. Quite the opposite. I've seen enough to consider it as a possibility just as much as anything else. Is it far-fetched? Is it not as likely? Of course. Yeah, I'm the first to admit that. But I won't rule it out. I just won't. I think that there's enough here that supports entertaining that idea and not dismissing it because case A, case B, and case C are obviously foreign technology drones spooking our Air Force bases off the coast of wherever. No, that an explanation for one is not an explanation for all. So I think that it's potentially all of the above, a long list of things, and what makes it difficult is trying to figure out which one. Aaron Desario, I do think I remember one of Schellenberger's older sources being Carl Nell, who has since not panned out. Um, I don't know enough about Carl Nell. I've never spoken to him to comment on that, but I appreciate the extra info, Aaron. I'm not sure if that was one of his sources. Um, Definitely drop me a line though. I'm curious if he wrote. What's tough is articles like Michael Schellenberger's, and this will be a respectful criticism, are behind paywalls, and I just don't agree with paywalls. I hate them. I don't like them. I am all for journalists supporting themselves. I am all for them finding ways to do that. We all do. I myself try and find ways to support my efforts and endeavors. But when you have a story this big, potentially this big, and to just say for X amount of money you can read it too, that to me is rough. And I'll give you a prime example and somebody who should be commended. Around the same time that the Immaculate Constellation story came out, a researcher by the name of Jefferson Morley came out with a JFK story. And I won't do the story justice to try and summarize it here, but in his words, he felt that it was one of the best and most important stories he's ever written about the JFK assassination. And he has a long and very credible history when it comes to reporting on that. And he as well has a paywall through his articles and website. And again, look, I support anybody who decides to do that. I just don't like it. I don't agree with it. But people are free to do that. But he felt that the story was so important to the general public that he took the paywall down for that story so everybody could benefit from it. And that to me, I think, is what this is all about. I think that when you feel that you have a story that can drastically change a narrative, or in this case, change humanity as we know it, maybe we should drop the paywall, because I think that that support will come by giving that away for free. If you support your story and you back it up, I think dropping the paywall is not going to hurt you. It will likely help you, and it will likely get you more paid subscribers. Like, wow, this guy made the great decision to release this to the public. I'm going to throw him $4 a month or whatever the price tag is to see what else he has. Because if this is his level of reporting, I have no problem giving it to him for what else is there. And yet we didn't see that in this case on a story that changes the world. But we did see that with Jefferson Morley and a story that was on the JFK assassination. Kudos to him. That's awesome, because he felt the value was there enough to make sure that everybody has a right to view it. Because in this day and age, not everybody has $5 to throw to a website to support. I don't have paywalls. You don't have to register for the Black Vault. I've never had a paywall. I don't believe I'm an advocate for transparency for a reason. I want to give everything away. So that's what I do. And I think that we have to realize that not everybody has like $5 to start throwing to everywhere. And that's why I cringe when I see those types of paywalls, especially on stories of that magnitude. So it's kind of a shame, but it also adds an extra layer to try and vet the story, build off the story, read it. I'll admit I relied on other agencies and media outlets to cover Schellenberger's story, because I didn't want to go against my beliefs, even though I support Michael. I didn't want to go against my beliefs and just start throwing money everywhere just to read an article. I don't believe in that. I believe in somebody's right to do it. I just don't believe in that. So I know I'll get hate mail for that, but it's just who I am. All right, let me see here. Shardul, is it possible to FOIA anything about the alleged firefight incident between JSOC and the Lockheed Martin crash recovery teams from 2004? I may be drawing a blank on exactly what incident that you are speaking about. If you could email me or send me some information, I'm happy to look into it, and it just doesn't, it's not ringing a bell to me. But I can say, you can't obviously FOIA Lockheed Martin, but if the military was involved in any way, then yeah, I mean, there are ways that you can go after things, whether it's classified or not. It's a different conversation, but there's ways. So yeah, if you send me information, I'm happy to see what I can come up with. MC's Creations, I need to go, recharging time. Great live stream, everyone. I'm sorry that your battery's dying. Pretty excited to hear that my live stream drained your battery, that you listened that long. So thanks for that. Even though I wasn't the sole reason for draining your battery, I'll say it out there for fun anyway. I appreciate that. Let me see here. Now I'm just kind of going through the chat. And Shardul, I didn't see that was a super chat as well. I really appreciate that support. Hopefully I gave you a little bit more information there, but definitely reach out to me and thank you for that support. Tim Q, what do we know about the people who do the redactions? Is it one person or a committee? Can some of the redactions be just a random bureaucratic carp? Great question, Tim. And first, thank you for the support as well. So it varies from agency to agency. There's kind of a misconception that the FOIA officer is just kind of a desk jockey. They're not really cleared to see anything. You ask for something, and they're just like not going to be able to access anything classified whatsoever. That is absolutely a misconception. They generally are highly cleared or are connected to people that are highly cleared. So if your FOIA case gets into that type of arena, in a classified arena, then it is forwarded appropriately. Those people then are potentially, again, depends on the agency, responsible for the review and the redaction of the material for your particular case. So sometimes people within the FOIA offices are responsible for that. Other times, let's say the FOIA office is completely independent from a component of an agency. I'll use the DoD as an example. So OSD, the Office of Secretary of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staff, OSD/JS, they're the ones that process DoD related FOIA requests. What happens then is, let's say, there are documents from Arrow. I'll use an easy example. And Arrow is reviewing the documents. They're essentially, because they're what's called the Office of Primary Responsibility or the original classifying authority, or by definition, both, that they're the ones that review it. So not the FOIA case officer, even though they're cleared to probably look at it. The office that's of primary responsibility for the records generally are the ones that review it. In a lot of cases, they will tell you who was the one responsible for the redactions. Not 100%, but a lot of agencies will do that. So they will say, Sergeant so-and-so, Colonel so-and-so, Mrs. whomever, they were responsible for reviewing the information. And that way you sometimes have a name to go along with it. But it's kind of a wide, very broad answer, because again, it depends on the agency and depends on the clearance level and so on. So it's kind of all of the above. I wouldn't say that there's a committee. The committees come into play, let's say, with like the JFK assassination records, where I believe a committee was convened to review records for release. That's probably because of the sheer volume. I mean, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages, to where generally if a FOIA request comes up with a 90-page classified report, it's farmed to somebody cleared that sits down, reads it line by line, and goes through. To close that thought, for those who aren't aware, there are 9 different FOIA exemptions. The first one is B1, which we saw in the segment that I just went over with the briefing. B1 is the most frequently used when you get into sensitive information, because that's essentially it's a threat to national security if they give it to you and it's classified. So they can't. B1 is kind of that broad stroke. If it's classified and they can't release it, declassify it, then it gets B1. And then B2 on to B9 is all of the different other categories that they can use. So their job is to take those 9 exemptions and see if it applies to any information within what they're reviewing. And if it doesn't, it's declassified and released to you. But again, when it comes to FOIA level, it's generally more like one person versus a committee. The committees were convened for the legislative purposes and so on. Janice's Garage. Yeah, thank you again for all of that. Let me switch back to the regular chat here. And you could put I know it's a online faux pas, put your questions in all caps, because it allows me to see it a little bit easier. John, is it possible to FOIA request documents on military tech developments involving 0-point energy stuff? Give me 1 second. I think I did, but I don't want to misspeak. I definitely requested, but I want to see what I've published so far. Bear with me. Yeah, so it looks like this there was a intelligence. Let me see if I can share this easily without. There's the joys of the live stream because I wasn't prepared to show it, but I want to show it at least. This will be something that you can look at. So let me stop that. Sure, I'm not sharing my bank account or some crazy thing. Okay. So when it comes to 0 point, this was a Intellipedia entry. Let me see. I requested 0 point energy. Intellipedia was essentially Wikipedia for the intelligence community. There were three different versions of it. Or I should say there are three different versions of it: an unclassified, a secret, and a top secret. And they have their respective classifications for all of their articles. So what I started to do was create an archive of all the different entries you can see here, all the different entries on all sorts of topics of here, Mother Teresa, missile defense news, MK Ultra, mothership, even Mohammed Wandi bin Mohammed. So like different terrorists and terrorist groups, nerve agent, Nevada test site, even Area 51. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. 0 point energy was one of them. Let me see what they gave. Yeah, here it is. So you'll see, I'm not going to read it to you, but there was an entry in Intellipedia. A lot of times sometimes, not a lot of times, I don't have a stat for you, but you sometimes see text from Wikipedia that was imported. So sometimes that's not as interesting because you already had access to that. Other times they import it, use it as a starting point, and then make it intelligence community specific. That's where it gets a little bit more interesting. This was the unclassified version of their Intellipedia entry. Did not look like there were classified versions, at least at quick glance here. But references are often cited. Sometimes, a lot of times, those are open source. Other times, they're actually classified references to government documents, reports, programs, and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. So yeah, you can request 0 point energy stuff. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to find because it's not something that they really talk about a lot, but that is something that I would look into. A quick note on Intellipedia, because it's such a sad story that I really wish more media outlets picked up on, because it was a huge blow to transparency and to the Freedom of Information Act. And I'll tell the story quickly. Obviously, Intellipedia was exactly how I described this essentially Wikipedia, this encyclopedia for the intelligence community. And they would have editors that would go in and they could frequently change information as intelligence got more specific or detailed, as things changed, whatever, for their respective topics. You can go in there and edit it. So if you were cleared, you can do that. Well, after quite a few years of collecting these documents, and you can see I've got tons of entries, the NSA shut it all down. And the NSA decided that they were going to stop the release of all Intellipedia entries to people like me. Now, if you go through the FOIA case logs, I was probably one of the only ones that was requesting this information. And that's unfortunate because there's a lot of information that you can come up with. I mean, here's the one for Area 51, where you can get information on secret military installations and all sorts of things. And yet they stopped it all. And why they stopped it, they essentially described me. And they said, because we don't want people to take this piece of the puzzle and this piece of the puzzle and this piece of the puzzle and put it all together and rebuild it, that they decided to shut it down. And I fought it. I filed, what was it, 130 plus appeals to the NSA. And I kind of deep down knew that I was going to lose. But my mantra is always appeal. But why did I have to do 130? Well, that's how many cases over the course of years were just all of a sudden shut and closed. And so I think I'm kind of going off the top of my head, but they were like 5 or 6 years, going back 5 or 6 years of me requesting these cases that were still open, because some of these would take years to get out. They went back, they made the decision they did. They went back and they closed everything. And so I just received letter after letter after letter after over the course of like 4 or 5 days. And I mean and they physically mailed them. So the stacks of letters from the National Security Agency came in, and I have a private mailbox run by a private company here locally, and they were seeing these just stacks of NSA letters come in, and I would walk in and they would just kind of like side eye me because they didn't really know what I do or anything. And it was kind of funny, but not, because opening them all were just appeal denial, appeal denial, appeal denial. So I got so angry that I filed an appeal on each and every one. And so then they had to process 130 plus. Now, I know that that's not going to cause too much of a hassle for them and prolong other people's cases. So don't give me too much of a hard time, because I knew the decision was made. So they were just going to form letter it out. But what I wanted to prove was the point that this was utterly ridiculous. And I lost each and every one of those appeals because they felt that they should hide it. And it's too bad. So from 0 Point Energy to Area 51, ballistic missile early warning system, Benghazi, I mean, you name the topic, I was going after it. And the final thought I will give you on this, and I'll move on, is their explanation, which I fought through appeal, was that the FOIA exemptions still applied to each and every individual case. So just because I built a database like what you see on your screen here of the Intellipedia system, the FOIA exemptions were still the same. It didn't matter if I was putting them together, because it's not like I was, seeing underneath the redactions or anything. So the logic was completely lost on me. I have no idea what their reasoning was. I tried to fight it in the appeal and I lost. I believe if I took them to court and sued, I potentially could have won. The reason why I didn't was, number one, funds, because if I lose, then it's super expensive, but it's expensive nonetheless. But number two, I felt even if I won, that what they would do is find a way to either use B1, which would be the national security blanket, so they can cover it all, or consider the documents, because they were like Wikipedia and always evolving, that they would consider them as a draft. And even though they were published and utilized by the IC, that if they utilized them as a draft, let's see if you learned anything from that presentation I did on the UAPTF briefing. If it's a draft, exemption FOIA B5 will apply. And so I thought that if I spent the money, I sued and I won, which I actually felt I could have, they could have turned around and said, these are draft documents. They're never solidified and final. So they would exempt them under B5. So I would win the case and then get nothing but redacted pages or full denials under B5. So sorry for the legal mumbo jumbo there, but some always ask, like, well, why don't you take them to court if you feel you could win? That was my reasoning and logic. All right. So going back to the chat here, watching the time because I had to pick up my kids. Senate Armed Services Budget Approval 2024, AFRICOM unmanned mothership experimentations. Your thoughts? So I'm not sure about your specific reference here, but just by reading it, that doesn't surprise me at all. Let me go ahead and remove this for a moment. I'm going to pull up something here. I'm only shielding my window here because I don't want to. I wasn't prepared for surfing around on the internet, so I don't want to again show my either bank or I have some orders and stuff for my normal business up, so I don't want to dox anybody from that business. So bear with me here. Okay, so it does not surprise me at all that I see stuff like that because of documents like this and all this talk about motherships and stuff like that. Obviously I'm looking at an actual ship on this one, but they are experimenting with these vessels that are carrying all of these UAV or unmanned vessels as a mothership. There's also something called parasite aircraft, where even 40, 50 years ago, the US military was experimenting with craft that would hold other craft, multiple craft, sometimes one or two craft, other times even more. But essentially, you're talking about a mothership type scenario. And you can see here from this Navy document, they've adopted that wording. So when people see mothership, I think that there's a lot of misconception there, because what do you automatically go to? Independence Day, it's alien, and they're here and they've admitted to it. But that's not necessarily the case. This was written in 2009. So you're talking about 2009, and they're talking about mothership UAV vessels. Look at this. This is actually pretty cool. These pictures. Hold on. I was going to publish this on social media the other day and kind of got behind, but yeah, you look at the different types of drones that would essentially be inside these mothership vessels. Again, this particular document with a picture of a ship, but they're experimenting with larger aircraft that would have these swarms and capabilities. So you have a large, I'm making this up, but you have a large cargo plane, call it a C5, whatever. So a C5's loaded up with 100 smaller drones. There's your mothership. You fly over territory that you want to surveil, and you open up the cargo bay door, and out pops 100 of these drones. That to me is nothing foreign, pardon the pun, but it's not alien. It's not anything that I think is worthy of the reaction that I've seen in different ways of finding the word mothership. Because again, you see this quite often in government documents, and that is the technology that they are experimenting with and have been experimenting with. And it's completely logical. You take one aircraft, you fly it over a combat zone, and your one aircraft is bringing 100 with it. That's awesome. And it's great. And it's something worthy of it. So again, I don't know exactly what you're referring to by the budget approval 2024 for AFRICOM, but if it's what I think it is, it's likely something to do with these experiments. So great question, LM. Thank you. But hopefully that explained a little bit more for you. All right. Going through some questions here. Wade, was there ever a FOIA request made in regard to the shutdown of the Sunspot Observatory? Yes, there was. I'm pulling up my so I have had since 2020 a request to, I'm going to write this down so I can follow up on it. A request to the FBI. I filed it March 13th, 2020, and it's still open by my records. So I will ask them what the status is. So thank you for that reminder. I've got all sorts of documents that I've requested over the years that sometimes I forget about. And that would be one of them. So thank you for that. Jacques O'Neill. Hi, John. Any further news on the sentient system you mentioned in a video last year? Great question. Nothing to report, but yeah, based on those documents that came out, I had filed additional cases. Let me see here. February of 2023, I have one to the NRO, which seemingly seems still open. And then another one. Yeah, it was to the NRO, digging in on what kind of UFO and UAP information there. So since that's their program, they would be what we call the OCA. So they would be the one to release it or review it. Still open. So maybe that's another one I'll follow up on. I appreciate that question too. But yeah, open since February 2023. It's probably around the time I did that video, Jacques. Luke K. Can FOIA requests be made on Immaculate Constellation? Yes, they can. If you can imagine, I filed requests on it the day the story came out. So I may be very public about my criticism towards these anonymous sources and so on. But truth be told, look, I take the leads. I can separate my own personal criticism of stuff like that and just act as a researcher solely and go for it. And I've done that on all sorts of things. Immaculate Constellation. Did I say Conception? I hope I didn't. Immaculate Constellation. I knew I'd make that mistake eventually. But I did the same with this as well. And so One, I could just tell you one case that that popped up, and I've filed a couple, but one was to search Major General David Abba's email box in the classified realm, obviously. So it's not like he's using Gmail or whatever, because sometimes I don't think everyone has a grasp on how that works. And what happens internally at the DoD is that they have secure comms at a top secret level where they can email about use apps and stuff like that. So I did make a request on Abba's email box. He is the director of special programs and the director of the Department of Defense Special Access Program, Central Office, or SAPCO. So you kind of start on those types of levels. I've filed others. It's not just on his email box. But you start these phishing expeditions and see what kind of keywords come up. I can tell you one of the other ones that I think will actually be fruitful and will produce documents, and it's to the Public Affairs Office. So essentially, what I do as well, and the reason for this, and for any FOIA people out there, here's a little tip for you, is that I don't think that if you were to blindly submit a case on Immaculate Constellation and say, give me everything you got on this, it would be fruitful. But what's interesting to me is that we know for a fact by Schellenberger's reporting and that he reached out to the Public Affairs Office. The moment you do that, you start a paper trail. And that paper trail sometimes is just between the journalist and the spokesperson, and it's kind of snoozy. Not much there. But if Susan Goff, we assume it's Susan Goff, I think he said DOD broadly, he didn't name the spokesperson. But if he didn't go directly to her, it probably winded up with her, given the nature of the questioning. What happens is that she potentially turns around and goes somewhere else to ask to start fishing around herself because she has to formulate a statement. Now, that's generally how it works. I have my criticism of her. She refuses to respond to me for the most part now. I can't get anything from her, mostly because I've been pushing her on one particular incident since June of last year. And to date, I mean, I've followed up probably over 30 times now and periodically get like working on it or whatever. And that's June of 2023, believe it or not. So well over a year and a half. But anyway, it creates a paper trail because then you see who the spokesperson speaks with, who they reach out to. And so you just start fishing. So at the very least, I think it'll be fruitful because I'll get the Schellenberger questions and potentially Goff's response, if any. I know after he published, she submitted a statement out. So we'll probably get that, which we already have in the general public. But again, it's looking for those little leads to see where she went, if anywhere. If she didn't go anywhere, that in itself is a story. Because let's say there is something to all of this. Schellenberger's spot on, and he has sources that are really relaying something that is touching on a real program and something real. What happens then is if she doesn't go anywhere and just responds and says, and just makes up the quote, well, there's nothing there. There's nothing to Immaculate Constellation. It's made up, or whatever her quote was. That's problematic because she's not doing her job. And look, I know she gets a lot of flack, but it's not really her crafting these statements. She'll craft them based on information she might get. Other times she's relaying what the statements are written by, let's say, the general counsel's office or inspector general, if she has to go through there. But whatever it may be, generally she's either taking the information and crafting it from that, or had the statements crafted and she's conveying them. I've seen all of the above. She's not supposed to just make stuff up, and that's the word of the Department of Defense. Spokespeople, they don't do that. They're not supposed to. Prime example is the Joseph Gradisher story I told you however long ago in this stream, where Joseph Gradisher didn't craft the statement that I got about Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast and said that they were all unidentified and put it all in official writing. That was the first time ever. That was a huge deal, but it wasn't Gradisher that wrote it. And by doing that request, those cases, I had discovered this guy by the name of John J. Stratton. No one knew of that name at that time. That's my whole point with this story, is that you never know what you're going to find out. Sometimes it's absolutely nothing. Other times it's pure gold. So we'll see what comes up and who she goes to. And look, if there's 20 pages of communications between her and an unknown person and it's redacted top to bottom, you, we're all going to be interested in that. So that's why you kind of go for all of it, cast the net, see what you come up with. All right, let me see. Mothership does sound cool. You put mothership in anything, automatically intriguing. Operation Chrome Dome, this is from Kelly B. Operation Chrome Dome still has at least 12 highly classified broken arrows that the DoD will not release crash info. Have you FOIA'd anything related to broken arrows or Chrome Dome? I have. Chrome Dome doesn't sound familiar, but I'm checking here. I am going to speak to Broken Arrow here in a moment. So there is an archive of documents that I've got on broken arrows. So definitely, if you go to the blackvault.com, you can click on broken arrow incidents. You can see how long I've had this. Last time I updated it was 2015. I got to update it even more. But there's different documents on different broken arrow incidents and information on broken arrows. For those who don't know, it's essentially an accident with a nuclear weapon or nuclear component, but doesn't cause a risk of a nuclear war, is essentially the definition. So there are incidents there, nothing UAP specific, but not sure if you're specifically asking for that. Let me see if anything comes up under Chrome Dome. Maybe this is what you're referring to, the Thule Air Force Base incident in 68. If so, you'll see a ton of material on that. I went after documents with the CIA, with the NSA, and the Air Force, and you can see all sorts of stuff, even with the photos and everything from the incident. So I'm not sure. I mean, this is why I came up with the Chrome Dome. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about, Kelly, but if so, then you have a ton of material there. And off the top of my head, I would have never remembered that I got those. And that was only 2021. So lots of stuff there. You see hundreds and hundreds of pages. So hopefully that'll help you out there. Jacques, I got that question for you. You are very welcome. Let me see here. All right. I think that I'm caught up. Nope. Lee Folks. Hello, John from the UK. What was your most jaw-dropping FOIA return? That's a tough one for me. I can't pick one, Lee. There's so many that have come in over the years on different topics that drop my jaw in different ways. So, a lot of things sometimes are fascinating to me, and it's not to the general populace. And other times I go, oh, this is whatever, and I put it out there, and it like winds up in a story that goes viral. So, um, that's why it's kind of hard for me to pick ones from my own, just because I deal with so much that there's not one that sticks out. UAP stuff, I think that you have quite a few documents that fit that bill, even going back to the 1976 Iran incident, which I've talked about quite a bit on this channel. And that's a document you can read, to some of the more recent stuff where they're obviously hiding everything there is to know on these documents because it's heavily classified. That's fascinating and jaw dropping on different levels for different reasons when it comes to UAP. So I don't really have one specific document that I can tell you. I'm sorry to say. Great question. I have no exciting answer for you. There's just a lot of cool stuff. So I try and take those documents that do really kind of pique my interest and profile them here on this channel or on social media. If sometimes, it's just not worthy of a video because it's boring as heck. It's like, hey, look at this. Well, that's it. See you later. Like there's really not much to say. But they're better served as a social media post. Make sure you follow me on social media because I blast those types of things out all the time. And, hopefully that'll get some cool documents for you. Hakan, you may have missed it. I just dealt with that. Yeah, definitely have some. There's nothing to report yet because it's all just unfolding, but that is something. LM Cobra Brass. Are you familiar? Have you run into it in FOIA circa 82 to date? Cobra Bass. Let me do one search here, but I don't think so. Cobra Brass. No. Sorry to say that doesn't ring a bell, and I don't see that I've ever really requested anything on it, at least not in the last 15, 20 years. So let me know. Feel free to drop me a line. Let me know any information on it, or maybe I'll Google it as well. But this is a good question. UFO Crash Hunter. John, thanks for all you do. You're very welcome. Always wondered how you keep organized. Do you use some note-taking software or just have a massive spreadsheet? Um, well, so I created, I'm gonna try and find a way. Hold on. I just want to make sure no personal information is on here if I share it. Bear with me here. So yeah, I created why I said 15, 20 years when I've been filing FOIAs for almost 30 is I didn't start keeping track of them till quite a few years in the way I should have. I mean, I started at 15, so I was still learning grammar, let alone trying to, figure out the best organization. I also never in my wildest dreams thought like, hey, I better start a database now because 30 years from now, when I'm an old man, then I'll be able to cross reference everything. It took me a couple years to start that. Started with an Excel spreadsheet. This database I started, it was roughly about 2,500 cases in. And again, I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything. Bear with me here. I'm going to show you what I created. So it's my own design. I started with an Excel spreadsheet, then imported into this. Hold on, Joys of Life. Hold on. I don't think I've ever shown this. Pretty straightforward and basic. But what I did was created a way for me to keep track of everything that I do when it comes to FOIA. And you can see here, like, so folder name is how I keep everything when it's physical. So snail mail and stuff like that. Yes, a lot of agencies still do that. Others will electronically send. That makes it a lot easier. But I'll keep track of it through the topic, and that's how I'll label the FOIAs, the manila envelopes and folders, the agency. So that'll help me search through what agency. I use the acronyms across the board for every agency so I can easily do searches across the database. FOIA case number. So that way, if I got a phone call, I'll tell you, like right before this live stream, my phone went off and it was an agency, and couldn't tell by the number, and it was the NGA. And nothing interesting or fascinating to report, more administrative, but they were telling me about a case I had in 2016 that they're looking into because I asked about it, and another one actually involving David Grush. And there's probably not going to be movement on it for a little bit, but I keep pushing to see. So my whole point is that then they'll over the phone say, "Oh, I'm calling regards to FOIA case number." Then they'll give it to me. I can easily pull this up as I'm talking to them and then instantly figure out what they're talking about. Because sometimes I think they fail to realize like I have other cases. So they call and they're like, "Yeah, they're your case that you filed 7 years ago." And it's like, well, what is that? Like I've filed thousands since then. So please let me know. So that's a way to really keep track. Open is just that. Processing is a second label that I have, which is after I get it acknowledged. So if I have some kind of human interaction, then I put it to processing. Open means that I really haven't had movement on it. This Immaculate Constellation went in on the 9th, so I haven't really had any interaction yet. So it stays open. When it does processing, you guessed it, when it's closed, it's closed. And then under appeal is how I keep track of my appeals. Appeal denied, appeal accepted, and then I'll put some other notes depending upon what it is. The original FOIA goes here, any references, notes, anything that I have to keep internally so I can keep track of all of it. I won't forget what Immaculate Constellation is all about. But let's say you send me the person sent me information on this Cobra Brass, and I don't remember what it was. I'll paste in all that information so I can remember where it came from. So then if I get documents, I can then write an article and call back to whatever source that I used, a news article, give credit where it's due if somebody gave me the tip, that kind of stuff. These other ones are kind of self-explanatory. If I obtained it electronically, if I filed it physically into my archive, I've got storage units off-site that I keep just document boxes on top of document boxes. I used to have filing cabinets. There was a day where I could fit everything in a few filing cabinets, and that day came and went. So now I just have boxes and boxes, and that's what this is over here. So I can keep track of what physical box that I have it in, and I label them just like that. So I keep track of it that way. Date filed, last time I updated the record. And yeah, if there's back and forth, I'll keep track of the correspondence down here. And let me remove the comment here so you can see it, but just different ways to keep track of that. And then I can store files over here. So there's your rundown of how I keep track of it all. I wanted to show it to you guys because if you are getting into FOIA yourself, I highly recommend keep organized because it's very easy to forget. It's very easy to kind of lose your focus on certain cases because you'll file and then, like I said, move on to something else. You lose your focus and then that's it. And then the agency will be years and years later where they go, "Hey, are you still interested in this?" And you go, "Yeah, I am. I never lose it. Please continue to process." So keep organized. That's one way to do it. And that's the database I created. So hopefully that shows you a little bit of insight inside the Black Vault stuff that I very rarely show. All right. Janice's Garage. This is interesting. This is the behind the scenes I wished for. Well, there you go. That's a little bit of a sneak peek of how I do it. And one thing I didn't point out is the number of records. So again, I started about 2,500 cases. Um, I'm approaching about 11,000 FOIA cases. But in here, there's 8,344 that are archived. And then inside some of those records, there are multiple FOIA cases. And then, so that one record will actually count for like 5 different cases. If I could remember the title, it's kind of funny because a lot of times I'll have to create this type of thing to where I'm making this up, but I'll have cases that are bounced around from agency to agency. So what happens is that I have to keep track of the different FOIA case numbers for each particular agency as it gets passed. And what's interesting is some of these have gone 5 or 6 agencies deep, and I'll have on this line 5 or 6 FOIA cases. And it's so hilarious to look at that over the course of however many years that you have to go to that length to track documents down, and it gets really, really confusing. So that was the other reason why I wanted to show you this. Was that's why you create these organization tools to keep you organized, keep you focused, and make sure you don't lose sight of it. UFO. Oh, you're welcome. Awesome. Thanks for a look for behind the scenes. Absolutely. Yeah. I know that was like a big explanation and probably more than what you were looking for. But I've always, wanted to kind of show that to help others get organized as well. Jason Aragoni, John, thanks for all you do. My kids and I are big fans, love tuning into your live videos. Jason, I really appreciate that. And please tell your kids hello for me and thanks for tuning in. Very, very cool. Love hearing. I don't know what age your kids are, but I started this at 15. I'm now like a heck of a lot older. So I always love seeing kids interested in this. That is absolutely my passion, to get people interested, especially at a young age, because this opens up so many doors that really helps in so many different ways. And I'm not just talking about UFOs and UAP. That's always fun. But researching and looking into things and challenging your own beliefs and learning. I get school kids all the time from grade school all the way up to university level that are doing reports on various topics. and hearing that they're using the Black Vault for those reports or asking for help or guidance on where to go and where to find certain info is one of the things I absolutely love doing. So very, very cool that they like watching and listening, and hopefully their curiosity is piqued on some of this stuff. And yeah, have fun. That's the biggest thing I can recommend to them. But more than all else, please give them a hello for me. Jacques, again, brilliant way to keep track of your FOIAs, John. I thought you were using Microsoft Access. I think Access is the online one, if I remember correctly. And although I've dabbled in looking into that because I have multiple web servers, and I thought, well, just utilize that. We'll be able to access at any time. And I said to myself, don't, because I just didn't want all of that data out there, because I do put notes in there. There's personal information and stuff like that. And so what I do is essentially keep it offline altogether. I know that there's secure paid services and stuff like that, but it's just another software package I can't afford to tack onto the list of all the other ones. So this is good. I have proper backups and stuff like that of the database itself, and just use it locally, which is much safer, I think. Aaron, on those lines, I didn't read your comment until now. Need to switch to a cloud-based SQLite solution. Yeah, the programs that I was playing with prior, and actually built one, and then it came to go time to import all the data, and that's why I opted not to. Um, was a SQL backend, PHP front end, SQL backend. Everything was solid. It was actually pretty cool, but I opted not to do it because of, again, storing personal information from people, or I hate using the S word, but sources and stuff like that. I didn't want that out there, so I, again, keep it locally, keep it safe. I believe there is UAP overlap between some Broken Arrows and what happened at Malmstrom and Minot Air Force Base. The Air Force still has unreleased Broken Arrow incidents. Thanks for your help. Yeah, they absolutely do. UAP related or not, they keep a very tight lid on that, simply because of the obvious reason that it's them screwing up the nuclear weapon. So they don't want that out there a lot, and they kind of keep that stuff, pretty tied down, and they don't want to release it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, but as you can see from that archive, there is material that comes out. You can access it and get an idea of what kind of problems Broken Arrow incidents can cause. There's also other ones. There's bent spears. I'm going off the top of my head here. Bent spears, Broken Arrows, and there's another one. I'm drawing a blank on it, but I have archives for each one of those nuclear weapons types incidents, and those incidents all have their respective names. So Broken Arrows isn't everything. There's different types. Bent spear. Oh man, I'm going to kick myself after. I'm sure I'll think of it, but that's another one. Is Greenwald Dutch or German? It's German. The original was Grunwald, but Ellis Island screwed that up. So it's Greenwald here in America. But yeah, back in the day, my great grandparents, I think it were great, I forget. My dad was sadly, who passed last year, but really into the family tree stuff. And my mom and I have discovered some of the work that he was doing. So we've saved a lot of it. And he found even the ship logs of, again, I think it was my great grandfather, potentially my great, that came over and found the ship logs and everything. So very cool stuff. B1, I want to put that on a t-shirt. I think I need to make that. Just somebody posted that on social media and I fell in love with it. All black t-shirt with big bold white writing across the chest that said B1, exactly like you've got it there, P99. Yeah, look at you, J. Allen Heineken. You're absolutely right. I'm a Dutchie. Greenwald, I'm guessing original name is Grunwald. Yeah, is definitely German. Yep, that's it. Let me see here. Was my dog in the background making an appearance? Do you ever put in a FOIA and you get a response leading you through a department like the Department of Agriculture or some other agency you weren't expecting? Um, Not anything that's kind of stuck out. Generally, you have an idea of things getting forwarded around, if they're going to be forwarded around through FOIA. So whether that be an agency, having to send the request to, again, what we call the OCA, the original classifying authority. That is not really unexpected, simply because you should have an idea roughly of what you're requesting. Sometimes, though, I'm kind of changing your question here, but sometimes I'll get results from agencies I didn't expect, like UFO records from the National Forest Service. So, and that's a true story. So, filing to the National Forest Service for UAP and UFO information, I didn't expect anything, but to cover all your bases, you want to make sure that you cover all your bases. That was a base. And what came back was UFO related information, including photos from the National Forest Service. So, in that regard, yes, you can get unexpected results from agencies you didn't expect, but them forwarding it around, sometimes not really a surprise. Kelly B, yes, something quiver. Like, hold on, wait, I got to figure this out now. Hold on, because you're right, and I can't think of it. It's been years since I filed for some of these documents. Hold on. And sure enough, it came up with the Intellipedia entry. That's why these were so valuable. It's such a shame. Empty quiver. That's what it is. So yeah, so there's all sorts of different nuclear weapons accidents. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for that lead. I couldn't think of it, but yeah, empty quiver was one. And yeah, sure enough, there's nuclear weapon incidents entries, nuclear weapon deficiency entries, all in Intellipedia that you can download. So definitely check out that Intellipedia archive that I got going on, because it's awesome. There's a lot of cool stuff. Can't get any more, but there's a lot of cool stuff. All right. Okay. I've got to get some remaining stuff done before I close the stream here, and then get to my kids. So that being said, I'm going to sign off. But I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you for being patient with me on this channel, as the updates are much less frequent than I would like them to be. But I'm going to do my best to keep doing this kind of stuff, do my best to speed up the updates and stuff like that. There's all sorts of segments that I want to record for you guys. Make sure that you're subscribed to any social media that you might use, from Facebook to X. I know some of you don't like either. Some of you like one more than the other. Make sure you subscribe, though, because they will get you the most up-to-date information. A lot of what I publish is simply in written form, and I write articles about the documents I get that sometimes aren't worthy enough for a video, or I shouldn't say worthy enough, but just interesting enough to make a video presentation about it, but are fascinating to read. So make sure that you subscribe to those social media channels, and I will continue to try and do more videos in the future. As always, a thumbs up is truly appreciated. Please like and make sure you're subscribed to the channel here on YouTube. That's where you're going to get the most video content. But like this live stream, sometimes I just stream it out and blast it to everybody. It's not always the case, but in this one it is. Just make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Make sure your notifications are on. That way you get notified of all of the videos that I drop. That said, thank you guys. Truly appreciate it. Love all your questions. Love all of you guys. And a special thanks to all of you who gave that support through the super chat. Please know, if you didn't hear me say it before, 100% of everything that comes in goes right back into the site and brings that research to you guys. So thank you. Much appreciated. And we'll see you next time.